What's happening, YouTube? Welcome back. Jeff Robbins here. So in this video, what we're going to do is we're going to do some routine maintenance on our Hilliard flame clutch. In my opinion, this is something that you'll want to do after every race weekend, just to ensure that your engine's running at peak performance and you're not losing anything due to a dirty, gummed up, unserviced clutch. So I'm going to show you what I do to my clutch after every race weekend. There's tons of parts in here that we'll go ahead and get cleaned up. And what you'll notice is even after just one weekend, see if I can get some light in here, these clutches just get full of this rust, and I think that's just because they heat up and cool down so quick. But they actually get rusty even with no water. You'll find a bunch of rust in your clutch or whatever it is that builds up in here. You're going to want to get that cleaned out. You've got 4 springs in here as well. They're extremely cheap, so I would highly suggest that you're swapping those things out pretty regularly and not just trying to run them for an entire season. There's just no need for that. So we're going to go ahead, we'll end up swapping our springs out. We're going to clean our shoes up. I'll show you how I do that. One thing you'll notice on these shoes, especially if you're not maintaining these things regularly, is these shoes have these grooves, and the metal will actually smear over and start filling into these grooves, and that's definitely going to hurt your clutch engagement. Clutch could be out there slipping, and if your clutch is slipping, you're definitely not going to be as fast as you should be. So I'm going to show you how I clean this. I'll go ahead, I'm just going to set the camera up here on the side, and when I need to show you something, I'll kind of hold it up. But I'm just going to go through what I do after every race weekend to keep my Hilliard flame clutch running as good as possible. Okay, so first things first, let's just go ahead and get everything broken all the way down. You're going to need some snap ring pliers to release your sprocket. And then you can use the same set of snap ring pliers to pull out all these springs. They're real easy. You just drop that in there and pop them out. Alright. So if you look at these shoes, I mean, just look at how dirty these things are. I mean, they're just absolutely filthy. Get some of it on my gloves here. Look at that. And that is legit one race weekend. I service this after every weekend we run it. Alright, so now that we've got everything broken apart, the first thing I like to do is I just get a little bit of sandpaper. I just rip little pieces off, and then first thing I'm going to do is just sand the inside of my clutch drum. Get some of that buildup out of there. If you're wondering, this is 120 grit. So once I've gone around a few times, I'll call that good. You don't need to get it quite perfect. You'll never get all of it out of there, but you just want to make sure that you've knocked out the majority of that buildup. Just like that. And then what I'll do is to my shoes, you'll notice you get the same buildup on top of the shoes. I'll go ahead and hit the top of all the shoes with the same sandpaper as well. There we go. So we've got everything sanded up as far as we need to go. My grooves really aren't too bad, but if you do pull your clutch and you notice your grooves, like I said, they've got some metal that's kind of smeared over and started embedding. You know, that one's got a little bit, so we'll use that one. what I'll do is I'll put the clutch shoe in a vise, button it down just like that, and then I'll just grab a flat blade screwdriver, and you're just going to want to knock that metal out of those grooves and get those cleaned up. And this process right here can be kind of a pain, definitely if you haven't been maintaining your clutch. But if you maintain it pretty regularly, it's pretty easy to keep these grooves nice and clean. You know, I'll just go through these just to keep them as clean as they can be. Just like that. Grooves are clean. So the next thing we're going to want to do is we're going to want to clean everything up. I used to use brake cleaner back when I ran a NORAM clutch, but since I've done some reading, and for whatever reason, it might sound strange, but I guess metal can dry out. So you don't want to be using brake cleaner on your clutch shoes and your clutch drum because it dries the metal out. So since I've read that, what I've done is I've stopped using brake clean. And what I'll do is I'll just grab a towel, get my shoes on here, and then I'm just going to soak them real good with some WD-40. Get those nice and soaked up, and I'll do that with the same thing with my drum. Just like that. So what I'll do is I'll let that soak for a minute and then just dry it up, clean it up with a towel, and then we'll move on to the other parts on the clutch. Okay, shoes and drum all cleaned up. Got all the other parts and pieces all wiped up. The bearing, I like to run this thing through the ultrasonic cleaner. So what I'll do is I'll try to wipe as much grease off of it as possible, and then I'll just throw it in the ultrasonic cleaner while I'm cleaning my carburetor sometimes, and then just clean that up in the ultrasonic cleaner. Other than that, we've got everything wiped up, ready to go. So all I do from here is I'll just throw my shoes back into the hub, and then I'll just get my springs out, and let's go ahead and get these new springs installed. So if I didn't have a race for say 3-4 weeks in between races, I would leave these springs out and I'd just set them in here, put all this in a box, and throw it in the toolbox until we're ready for the race weekend. And then I would get all these springs installed before the race weekend, just because if you got your springs just sitting in here, there's going to be some tension on them. So I guess in theory, eventually they're going to get a little weaker if they're just sitting there for 3-4 weeks with tension on them. And if you're not maintaining your clutch at all and you've got these things sitting in here for months, they're definitely going to lose some of the strength. So yeah, so if we've got a few weeks in between races, I'm not going to install those springs. But I'm just going to go ahead and put them in right now, show you guys how I do that. Essentially all you got to do is grab one up, snap ring pliers. And just slide them in. They go in real easy. And I've actually been running my clutch with alternating black and white springs. That's pretty much the default go-to from what I can tell. Just like that. Go ahead and put our sprocket back in. So one thing you're going to notice is these snap rings, they kind of bow up. So they kind of got a little arch to them. So when you put these in, you want that arch so that it's pushing up on the sprocket to help keep it in there. Alright, sprocket's back installed. And from here we're basically done, guys. Just go ahead and throw your parts and pieces back in. Short of cleaning the bearing, and we're ready to go for next race weekend. Alright, so that's it, guys. Extremely simple procedure. 15-20 minutes after each race, pop your clutch off, pull the shoes out, clean everything up, and you're going to thank yourself in the end. That little bit of advantage that you'll have over your competition by simply maintaining your equipment, it's going to pay off in the end. So definitely do this after every race weekend, guys. We're racing here, we're trying to win, so you don't want to leave anything on the table. All right, guys, I hope that helps. Just another thing that I do in between each race weekend to ensure that we're running at our best. So plan your race your plan, have a good time at the track.